So welcome to the Project Management Special Interest Group session. We're going to start in about 5-6 minutes. I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping. It's a hybrid event, so we've got a number of people online and a number of people here at the BCS office in London. So just for the people here in the office, there's not any fire alarms scheduled, but if there are, or the fire alarm goes, it's out through the atrium that you met in, and then straight through there to the fire exits. If you need loos, they're out down this side, and that's probably it really in terms of housekeeping. We're planning to start soon and then finish around 8 o'clock with some Q&A in between them and some networking and some refreshments for that out in the atrium for those that are in the office. So I just wanted to introduce Paul Bradley. He's the Managing Director of Spoke, a training company, and this event's brought to you by the British Computer Society Project Management Group. We've got a couple of the committee members here and some more online, and we'll be looking at some of the chat questions that are coming, and a couple of colleagues will be looking at that and managing that part, and we'll field some questions here as well in the room. So Paul is Managing Director of Spoke. He's been delivering training around project and portfolio management for upwards of 25 years. And he understands all the methodologies, the certification and the training landscape. So what the expectations or the outcomes of learnings from this session for you is really to get a familiarization of the range of methodologies that are out there and the value of those. Know which certifications really would be of value in your career, and really talking about training opportunities, and the idea is how these can improve your ability to get hired and to progress in your career. So I want to go through a couple of things really just around if I can get through on this, if I can. Hang on. Right, I'll do it on this one. If I can get him. The reason the clicker's not working. So just to say that the talk's going to be recorded, slides and the video will be available on our past events page after the event. For those online, if you could stay muted, we're going to do the Q&A towards the end, and we'll manage that through some of our committee members who will field your questions, but put them in the chat room or in the chat feature, and then we'll pick up on them. That's possibly it. Questions and comments, blah, blah, blah. That's it. We're not running any polls. And just to say, we've got some events coming up, just to make you aware of them. Particularly the spring school that's happening in March for over a 4-week period. if you use the QR code, you can get information on that, but that's on our events page on the PROMS-G website. Good. So I want to hand over to Paul and run the session. Thank you, Paul. Paul, can you share your screen? And
Yep, certainly. Thank you very much, Peter. Okay then, so I'll just switch the presentations to my presentation here. Hopefully you can all see that. Good evening, I'm Paul Bradley, Managing Director of Spoke, as you're well aware. Good to be delivering online. I would rather have been there in person, to be honest, and I almost made it up until yesterday, but circumstances changed. So now I'm missing out on the key benefits of the refreshments in the lobby, so I hear. Yeah. We're all online here, Peter, listening to these refreshments going on, you know, and it's one of the drawbacks of the online training. So there you go. Plus, we have to make our own tea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a number of different methodologies in the portfolio program, project and agile management industry, if you like. Usually termed as PPM or PPRM or PPPM, P3M, you know, you call it what you like. But essentially what we're going to look at is the different types of methods that are there, what the industry is demanding at the moment, any updates that are coming along, and how they all fit together. Because there's so many different approaches that we have in our industry that, you know, certainly through the discussions that I have at various exhibitions and with our clients, sometimes it's difficult to know which way to turn, you know, with the different exam institutes and bodies that are out there. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to introduce the different partner organisations that are within our community. That will be method owners, exam institutes and training organisations, and then look at the overall framework, and that's going to be the bulk of the presentation that I'm going to give, where we look at how portfolio program, project and agile change management, management of value, and so on, all fit together, you know, sort of so that we can know what direction we might take in our careers. Okay, and then following from that, we'll have a bit of a question and answer session if you've got any questions as we go through, and also look at what sort of training options and exams there are out there as well, in terms of you know, what knowledge you need to have. So that's what we're going to do. Again, I'm going to aim to probably finish around about sort of 7:45, I think. I think that's probably best, because that gives us a quarter of an hour to have any final questions. So just so you know how to plan your time for the next you know, next hour or so, 10 minutes. So firstly, let's have a look at who's who in this industry. This is the you know, sort of very much around project and program management. What we have APM. APM, top left-hand corner there, they got the chartered status. So several years ago, they got awarded chartered status. They're our, well, certainly the UK's body for project management. And the highest qualification you can get with APM is the Chartered Project Professional. So they are the only chartered organisation for project management that we have. The most popular qualifications that they provide are the fundamentals and project management qualifications. Many of you may be familiar with APM PMQ, used to be called APMP. It's been around for quite a while, and that's very much a fully rounded body of knowledge, a set of criteria that's on that. APM's been around for a long time. They've got probably in the region of about 20,000 members, individual members that is, and about 500 corporate members. And if you're in project management and you take a pride in your industry and in your profession, then I'd recommend looking at joining APM as a member, and that will open up all sorts of resources, not least a number of different areas where you can attend events like this, similar to BCS, where you know you can work and meet with like-minded people at various forums. APMG International sounds familiar, doesn't it? APM and APMG. This is a different organisation to APM. APMG were the original exam institute for the PRINCE2 method, which then became a global standard. Since then, though, they've been working quite heavily on AgilePM, which is one of the largest used Agile approaches. And we'll come on to what Agile is later on in the next visual. But APMG are running AgilePM, probably in the region of about 40 to 50,000 exams a year are taken in AgilePM. And also a key approach from them is change management as well, which links in with the change management industry, which is an Australian body. APMG International, very much an exam institute. They've got probably, I don't know, sort of 60 or 70 different titles that they accredit, and they run the exams for different organisations. But in our industry, certainly the biggest product that they provide by far is AgilePM. And we'll come on to all that later in terms of how that differs from project management approaches and straight Agile approaches like Scrum. Axelos and PeopleCert, I've lumped them into one box because about 18 months ago, PeopleCert acquired Axelos, so they are now one organisation. They still trade under different organisations and brands, with Axelos owning methods such as PRINCE2, MOR, management of risk, MSP, program management, and so on, and ITIL as well, which you may be familiar with. So Axelos are the method owners, and PeopleCert are the exam institute and accreditors for all of the Axelos methods. But essentially, they're owned by the same people, and PeopleCert own Axelos and are responsible for continuing those best practice methodologies. PRINCE2 being probably the most used project management methodology globally. Probably over 2.5 million people are qualified in that now. IPMA is similar in its body of knowledge and approaches to APM, in the respect that the IPMA body of knowledge is based on best practice. It's more of referencing, so it's not so much a structured framework manual like PRINCE2. A body of knowledge is more a case of, what works well in different industry sectors, in different types of projects, and so on. And IPMA have levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. A, B, C, and D, and IPMA level D it has been mapped across to methodologies such as PRINCE2 practitioner and APM PMQ. So so we've got consistency in terms of levels of skill and difficulty for for those types. BCS, where we are now, BCS are very much in the remit of business analysis when we look at our own industry. And I'll show you how this fits in when I build them up. So you tend to find business analysis spanning across portfolio program and project management, and indeed agile management, to be honest, because you've got that constant review of analysing a business case and sort of credibility to different change initiatives. BCS also provide a certificate in Agile and certificate in Scrum as well, which are very well used in the development teams of project management, of course. And there's many other disciplines that BCS accredit and offer as well. PMI very much the US-based project management institute. Again, if I was to group these together, I'd say that APM is the UK body of knowledge. IPMA is more Eastern Europe, if you like, body of knowledge, and PMI is more North America and Asia Pacific region for a body of knowledge. And they're all very similarly structured, to be honest, but they're very regional. When you look at the differences between APM, IPMA, and PMI, their bodies of knowledge are quite succinct with each other. And indeed, APM and IPMA have done quite a lot of work together in the past. And PMI, being the US-based, the Project Management Institute, they have a CAPM and PMP, Project Management Professional, which is aligned to APM's PMQ and IPMA's level D. So I'll come on to all of this again later, but this is what I mean when you start looking at the industry, and if you're not familiar with it and you're looking at what path you might take as a project professional, sometimes it depends on the region that you're working in. Sometimes it might depend on the organisations you're working in. Because if you're working for example, a US bank, I'm based in Poole in Dorset here, near Bournemouth, and we've got JPM Chase just up the road. So if I was to go and work for JPM Chase, I'd probably find that PMI PMP qualification might serve me quite well if I was to bring that up in the interview that I've got that. Whether PRINCE2 might go down quite so well, I'm not so sure. Probably would do in terms of the UK offices, but they'll probably be looking for more PMI based stuff because it's US based, and we'll be using their approaches. So, it's good to have a good understanding of the different institutes there that provide these different recognised certifications. There's many others, of course, but they're the main ones that we work with, and they're the most used, to be honest. So when you look at what's required for building your project professionalism, particularly APM, I must say, because that is the recognised chartered institute for project management. Right, so taking all of that, what I want to do is I want to look at more the methods and product-based approach as to what these different methods are, what they're used for, and what the differences are, because we all talk about project management and projects and big projects and complex projects and programs, projects within programs, portfolio management, so sometimes these phrases mean different things to different people. We work with a lot of organisations, as you can imagine, and recently been working with a big utilities organisation who call everything a programme. And you look at some of their initiatives, and they're projects at best sometimes, as in terms of how we might define them. But sometimes it just comes down to terminology. And I think sometimes that terminology can be somewhat confusing when you're looking at the different methodologies out there, because sometimes it's just language that sort of gets in the way. Right, so what I want to do, all of these slides, by the way, are going to be sent out to everybody or made available. So, feel free to take notes or just sit back and enjoy the show, and you can go through the slides later. So they will all be made available to you, as will the recording, of course. So I'm going to start off with 3 levels really that we work within I'll call it PPM, sort of program and project management. You saw the invitation come out, and I think that was designed as a PPPM, which is Portfolio Program and Project Management. Okay, some people may have seen P3M. Or P3M3 or P3O, and what it is, the P3 stands for Portfolio Program and Project Management, and these are the typical 3 levels that you might find in a mature organisation. Quite often, when you do go into an organisation that are starting out in their change method approach, we usually advise to get the projects right in the first place. There will usually be an element of program and portfolio management, but it might not be quite as structured and disciplined as these methods would provide. But typically, you'd have a bottom-up approach to establishing a PPPM environment, okay, or P3 environment, as I've mentioned earlier. But it's always good to get the project management disciplines right in the first place. Portfolio management often exists within organisations because portfolio management would be held by the directorship or the partnership or maybe committees of some sort if you're in the public sector. And it may not be called portfolio management, it may be called strategic management or the strategy group or such. But you usually find that portfolio management will exist in most organisations, even if it's not called that. Now, essentially, what we're looking at with portfolio management is looking at the three main questions to be answered, really. Portfolio management is looking at all of the change initiatives within an organisation and asking, are we doing the right things? Okay, so looking at the different programs and projects that are being managed, looking at the investment that's being made and what the potential benefits are from those investments, and ensuring that the programs and projects, so all the change initiatives, are supporting the overall strategy in terms of where the organisation wants to go. Okay, everything that we do within an organisation, whether it be public or private sector, needs to be done for a reason. And that reason, you know, we always talk about benefits, you know, outcomes and benefits, and that's why we run these programs and projects. But they need to be aligned to our strategy, because if they're not aligned to the strategy, then there's a good chance that the organisation may well have shifted by the time these initiatives have delivered the outputs, outcomes, and benefits. So what portfolio management does is it acts as the jam, if you like, between the organisational strategy and the programs and projects that we're investing in, okay, and make sure that they're aligned to where the organisation is going. Typically, there's two cycles within portfolio management. There's a cycle that looks at planning the portfolio and then prioritising it, and then managing that portfolio and reviewing it. So it's like a cycle, if you like. And then what you've got overlapping that is a whole load of disciplines, such as governance, financial activity, management activity, strategic activity, so that you've got these different themes, if you like, that are driving us forward in terms of making sure that the programs and projects are indeed supporting that strategic goal. By the way, what I've got towards the end of this, which I'm not going to go through, is a summary of each of these different methods, so you can just read through what they represent. So again, you know, sort of if you're you know, writing these down quickly, there's really no need to. Okay. So are we doing the right things? Are we running the right change initiatives to support the strategy? Are we doing them in the right way? Part of portfolio management is that is like the management case, if you like. And this management case is looking at whether we're exercising the right methodologies to the right levels for the programs and projects. So are we running these in the right way, in the most efficient way that we can, with the correct governance and the right levels of control to support the changes? And finally, and probably most importantly, are we realising all the benefits from the changes that we're implementing? And that's in terms of providing efficiency to the organisation, increasing our output, for example, for the changes that we're bringing in. And this is very much focused on a different way of working. Okay, and if we're not realising those benefits from the programs and projects, then you know, you've got to question what projects and programs need to be prioritised over others, because we don't have an endless string of money and you know, sort of a pot to dip into, especially in these times. You know, so we need to look at the most efficient way of establishing our goals. Program management is essentially a way of coordinating a set of related projects in order to achieve a vision. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about program management as big project management, and it really isn't. You know, there's much different focus on program management. Essentially, the way program management works, and I might get a little bit artistic here, you know, sort of, because I think I can probably do this on the slide. So do forgive me if this doesn't quite come off. But if I go like that, there you go. Look. Okay, so you can see that. So I don't know whether it's come up on the screen in the room, but it's certainly come up on my screen. That's supposed to be a V, and that's a vision. So what we do is we identify and establish and define a vision for our organisation. Okay, and this is where we want our organisation to be in, you know, it may be in 1 year's time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. Okay, so what we do is we establish a vision. Okay, and that's where what we want the organisation to be doing in sometime in the future. So that's very much like you know, the future state, if you like. Okay, what we can then do as part of program management is we can put together what we call a blueprint. Okay, and this is defining all the different parts and areas of our organisation to say, look, in order to achieve that vision, our organisation needs to look like this. So this is very much the future state of the different parts of our organisation. And if we can establish that, then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to deliver outcomes in terms of working in a different way, which will help us to achieve our vision, of course. And then what we can do is we can take that blueprint and we can start looking at the different projects that we need to run and manage in order to achieve that blueprint. Okay, so this may be over a period of 3, 4, 5 years. It may be over a period of 6 to 12 months. Programs by or typically are longer in duration than projects, because the program will incorporate at least one project. It may incorporate several projects, okay, in order to achieve that blueprint and ultimately the vision. So typically programs will be longer in duration just because they're hosting and managing the projects within them, okay? And this is what we mean by a set of coordinated projects that are managed within the program. So what I've got here, I've got what, three projects running in order to deliver that blueprint. And what will happen is this will all be incorporated and wrapped up in my overall program, okay? And what will happen is at the end of each tranche, as we call it, okay, so in these sections here, usually at the end of each set of projects, so there may be several projects and then that'll form the end of a tranche. What we'll have in these hatchings, we typically have a transition period, okay, where the business change managers within the program are embedding the project's outputs so that it's preparing the business units and making sure that those project outputs are starting to be used so that we can develop the organization into achieving that ultimate vision, okay? And that's very much how program management works. So as you can see, it's not just big projects. What we have is we have a focus on outcomes and benefits. Benefits are being managed throughout the life of the program. Typically, issues and risks and communication and stakeholder engagement will be managed at program level, and that will be for all of the projects that are happening across the program. Okay. Terms of reference for projects, project briefs and such will be written at program level rather than project level. However, you'd still have a full project management team and a project management control within the projects that we have for each program. Okay. So that's how program management works, coordinating a set of related projects in order to achieve a business change. Okay. Right. Okay, that's probably the quickest overview of program management you're ever going to have, but hopefully that was useful. And then what we got is we got project management. And project management is basically, as it says there, the application of processes, methods, knowledge, skills, tools, and everything to coordinate what we do in order to deliver outputs. Sometimes you might use the term deliverables, outputs, products. Project management exists in order to deliver the product, and then what we'd expect is we'd hand over that product to the operations team or the business, and then it's down to the business to use those products in order to achieve an outcome, a benefit, and that ultimate change. Okay, but with project management, ultimately we're responsible for delivering the project output. Okay. We do need business cases for projects, of course. That gives us the reason why we're running projects. But project management per se is not responsible for achieving benefits. It's responsible for defining benefits and ensuring that we can deliver the products that will achieve benefits. But in terms of the actual use of the product over a period of time to achieve a successful outcome and benefits, that would be down to the business, or it may be down to program management if your project is part of a program. Not all projects, of course, will be part of a program. Some will be standalone, okay, but some will be part of a program. And ultimately, when you go back to the top of those three, portfolio management should be ensuring that all of these projects and programs that we're running are aligned to our corporate goals and their corporate strategy. Okay, so there's very much the three tiers there, if you like, for portfolio, program, and project, and that's what we mean by the P3, if you like. Okay. Right. Okay then. So that's the high level, if you like. Certainly the high level for project management. when we dip into a little bit more detail of project management, this is where we sort of go into the labyrinth or the plethora, should I say, of many different approaches that we have. Now, I touched on some of these in the introduction slide when I was introducing different bodies that within our industry. But what I like to do is go a little bit deeper, because we're focusing a little bit more on project management here, and just look at a little bit more detail on the most prevalent ones, if you like. Now, I've already mentioned APM, APM being the chartered body for project management. There's many different qualifications that are within APM. If you're new to project management, I'd usually recommend that you look at the project fundamentals qualification, the PFQ. This is very much based on the body of knowledge, but at a high level. We usually take people through a couple of days of everything project management. And if I'm honest, 2 days is really not enough at that level. So it's good for people coming into project management, wanted to know what project life cycles are, organisation structures, how to plan, how to resource, how to look at estimating and such. APM also includes things like conflict management, leadership and teamwork. So some of those softer skills, if you like. And that gives an all-rounded view of project management for people coming in at a high level. If you want to go deeper, that's where you look at the project management qualification, the PMQ. And this is much more detailed in terms of all the different disciplines. What we have is 16 different areas that are covered within the project management discipline. And we need to understand all of these. And this is anything from the life cycles to communication, stakeholder engagement, through to general project management disciplines such as risk management, issue management, quality management, plans, scheduling, resourcing, scope management, and so on. So, I'm not going to go into all of those different details, but it's the whole expanse of project management. And that's more designed for people who've got a little bit more experience in projects, mainly because you need to come with a broad understanding of what project management is. With APM and most providers usually recommend a minimum of 6 months of experience in a project environment. Now, APM is based on a body of knowledge. It's very different to PRINCE2. Well, it is and it isn't, to be honest. APM is very much based on the body of knowledge. It structures itself on a life cycle, and that life cycle looks at the concept. PRINCE2 talks about starting up a project, so there's consistencies there. Then what you do is you go with APM, you go into a project definition. Okay, within project definition, you'll be setting the project up. Now, PRINCE2 talks about initiation. And initiating the project process. So that has consistency. But thereafter, it becomes a little bit more different in the respect that APM then has two more life cycles. It has an extended life cycle, but it has 2 more life cycles in terms of deployment, which is where we develop the products and put them in place. And then it has transition, which is essentially handover and close. Whereas PRINCE2 has a set of processes which gives you a framework of activity to undertake your project. And that goes anything from what we have controlling a stage, so controlling each stage of your project. It has a process called stage boundaries, which drives us into detailed stage planning and stage reporting and such. It also has directing a project, which is the formal authorization at senior management level, at sponsor level, and it has closing a project, which is a set of activities to close the project. But for each, if I was to talk APM language, for each deployment of our project, so each development stage, if you like, within PRINCE2, you have a whole load of processes and activities. You probably have about sort of 4 or 5 processes consisting of about 40 activities that should be followed. Whereas APM has a much higher view of it, a higher level view of it. But then it references how to do things. Whereas PRINCE2 is very much the what should be done, who should do it, why it should happen and when it should happen, doesn't really give you very much how. Okay, so PRINCE2 being the framework of what, when, who, and APM being the how. Okay, also has a bit of the who and when, of course, you know, but it's more focused on the body of knowledge of what works well in different areas. Also, PRINCE2 is very much based on the manual. We've got a PRINCE2 manual. I had one here a minute ago. I think someone's, that's how popular it is. Someone's taken it already. But PRINCE2 is sad, isn't it? PRINCE2 is a 340-page manual, and it's process-based. It's a framework, okay? And it's got a set of activities in it. I think there's about 57 activities in PRINCE2 altogether. And everything that you learn on PRINCE2 is based in that manual, okay? It's not prescriptive though. It's very generic in different industry sectors and different types of projects. So it can be used in many different types of projects, regardless of what their nature is or whether they're complex or simple projects. APM, on the other hand, is although the syllabus is based on the body of knowledge, it draws on experience and knowledge, having completed various projects in different industry sectors. Okay, and in terms of qualifications, because I know some people online and BCS tonight are interested in qualifications as well. PRINCE2 is an open book exam, so you can use your 340-page manual to reference any possible answers that you can find in there. The exam is all based on that manual, so the answers are in there somewhere. Whereas APM is a closed book exam. So, you know, it's basically all from memory. And what makes it even more difficult with APM, particularly with the PMQ exam, it's a written exam. Okay, so whereas most project exams now are what we call objective tests, so, you know, complex multi-choice, if you like, including PRINCE2, APM is still a written exam. So you don't get a scenario, but you're asked to describe or explain a popular way of forming teams. Right, okay, then, so forming teams. So that may be what we call the Tuckman model, which is the forming, storming, norming, and performing. But you've got to have to do this from memory. So it's a very difficult exam, APM, PMQ, whereas PRINCE2, foundation and practitioner exams, they're objective tests. Foundation is a simple multi-choice, practitioner is a scenario-based objective test multi-choice. And you've got your manual. And I think this is what we're seeing in the industry, certainly from a qualification, certification point of view. Exams such as APM and IPMA and PMI are becoming quite higher valued because they are more difficult, because you've got to demonstrate that you've got this inbuilt knowledge and understanding of how they work, as opposed to being able to reference quickly through a manual. So they're the main differences there. So you find IPMA and PMI are very much body of knowledge based, written exams, and draw on the experience over a long period of time. PRINCE2, on the other hand, is a framework, a structured framework. It is what it is. I'd say most organisations use PRINCE2 in one way or another. If you go into a lot of organisations, quite often they'll be looking at either having a PRINCE2 framework in place or something like APM, or something that they might well have badged together themselves from different best practices. I'm very much a fan of PRINCE2. I've been brought up on PRINCE2 for years. You know, indeed my father, you know, sort of he was the original author, or trained the original author, shall I say, back in 1995 on Prince, you know, PRINCE1. So, you know, I've been in and around PRINCE2 for many years, and I'm a great fan of it, I've got to say, because it's structured common sense. That's basically what it is. You can't really go wrong with PRINCE2, but if you want an all-round understanding of project management, then I strongly believe that you know, you need the framework of PRINCE2, and that may well be at foundation level, but APM, you know, or IPMA or PMI, but because I'm in the UK, I'll be looking at APM. That gives me that fully rounded understanding of other areas in project management, you know, in terms of how can I manage my scope, you know, sort of in terms of what's included within my project and how that's going to change throughout. You know, how can I look at the resources and the teams that I have available and look at motivating them, you know, and putting teams together in terms of team leadership and stuff. You know, how can I ensure that I'm securing the right resources within my project, you know, and leveling and smoothing those different resources so that I'm making the, you know, the maximum efficiencies where I can. That's what APM gives me, whereas PRINCE2 will just say that I need to do some of this, but I haven't got too much information on it. Okay, so if you've got PRINCE2 as a framework, you are going to need to build in your own ways, if you like, your own procedures and such. Okay, so I'd say PRINCE2 gives you the framework and foundation. APM gives you a much more rounded approach, and the two work really well together. You know, it's I certainly don't see it as a you know, PRINCE2 or APM. You know, I think you need both, but to different levels, of course. Now, I've run you know, one of the biggest PRINCE2 training companies in the world, and I've always said, and I'll be honest with you, I've always said that if I was running my own department somewhere, knowing what I know, I'd probably go for PRINCE2 Foundation. Unless there's a personal reason for going for practitioner, I'll probably train my people to PRINCE2 Foundation and then switch them over to APM for, you know, improving and increasing their knowledge, and perhaps start to look at MSP, program management. So there's an awareness, you know, in terms of how am I impacting on those around me, particularly if I'm running projects about part of a program. And if I can get some awareness or foundation level training on some development like Agile or AgilePM, then I'll probably invest my money in that as well, so that I've got project managers who can communicate and talk properly with development teams. So rather than putting all my eggs in one basket in terms of PRINCE2 Foundation and practitioner, I'll probably be looking at going wider as opposed to deeper, if that makes sense. I'm a great believer that a very good project management manager will understand PRINCE2, because that's basically the structured framework, but they should have a good understanding of what program management is, not necessarily to a program manager level, but understanding how programs work and how their projects might differ in the way they manage them, if it's part of a program as opposed to being a standalone, but also understanding how to manage the teams. And that may well be looking at different agile methods such as AgilePM or Scrum and so on. Okay, so that's just my personal view. Okay, and I'd see that people who've got that wider awareness will do much better in terms of their career development. Now, I'm going to build this diagram up, and then I'm going to take some questions if you've got any as we go through. We're going to look at Agile next. We do have a question that's just come up from Steve. Do you have to revalidate PMQ after a number of years, like PRINCE2? No, the answer is no on that. Once you've got PMQ, it hasn't got an expiry on it, which is you know, which is quite nice, of course. I'm not sure it's a requirement, but it used to be called APMP, and then they rebranded to PMQ, Project Management Qualification. They did that a few years ago. Just recently, it's gone, or I say just recently, about 18 months ago, it went from 6th edition to 7th edition. I do know that there have been talks of, I'm not even sure I'm allowed to say this, but there are talks about an 8th edition. Now, what tends to happen in most of these methods and bodies of knowledge is from the initial discussions of you know, we need to update it, you know, to keep in line with best practice. Typically, there's usually about I don't know, at least a 3-year cycle from the initial initiation of an update. Now, I don't know when the 8th edition of APM is coming out next. I'd imagine it's probably going to be another 18 months at least. You know, that's usually the cycles that happen. I've also heard that there's updates to PRINCE2 as well. And the last update to PRINCE2 was 2017. So that's a 2017 version. I know that they've been talking about updates. We usually get involved. I was on the review panel last time of the 2017 version. And again, I can't see it coming out in 2023. I think probably 2024 earliest. I don't know, and I'm not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes or anything like that. I literally don't know when the next update will be. But because I haven't seen too much progress on that, I can't see anything coming out for either of those this year. Okay, although I do know that they have been spoken about. So there you go. With PRINCE2, by the way, just on that, because it's a similar sort of question to the PMQ one. With PRINCE2, we got news about a week, 10 days ago, that at the moment there's a 3-year life for PRINCE2 practitioner qualification, okay? And PRINCE2 Foundation lasts forever. But as from April, PRINCE2 Foundation will need to be updated as well. And also with your PRINCE2 practitioner, that will have to be updated or retaken every 3 years. But what Axelos and PeopleCert are doing is if you were to take a MSP exam, for example, that will automatically renew or reignite your PRINCE2 qualification certification if you take it before it expires. My personal view, I think, is a little bit odd, because if you study and take MSP, you've not renewed your PRINCE2 knowledge. But hey, that's the way it's all going to work as from April. Okay, so you know, look out for some press releases and information on that. You know, so you can see how to retain your qualifications if you've already got it. And also, what they're going to expand on is the CPD scheme as well. So you can register your CPD development. So this, for example, you know, going to go for what, an hour and a half here. So this could account for one CPD hour. So CPD being continual professional development, by the way. And you can register this with Axelos, and that can contribute to keeping your qualifications current, okay, depending what they are. But there's big changes in April, particularly around PeopleCert, where you've got this 3-year cycle renewal, but you can renew your qualifications by taking a different method. Also, just on that note, just be aware, as from April, prices are increasing a lot. Okay, so you know, and that's PeopleCert exam prices. We've had notification of this. I think they've released a press release on it anyway, so I'm okay to talk about that. But if you're looking at getting qualified, particularly in PRINCE2, do it before April, because you will save probably a couple of £100 just on the exam. Okay, right. Okay then. So covered portfolio program and project management. We've also got agile development approaches there. The biggest one, you know, or biggest grower, if you like, is APMG's AgilePM. Now, AgilePM is an agile approach, but it's got project management wrapped around it. So it does have a life cycle. You know, so we do have a feasibility at the beginning, which is similar to concept, which is similar to starting up a project. Okay, we do have foundations, and foundations is similar to initiation or definition. You know, so a lot of these approaches are similar in their life cycle. Let's be honest, there's only so many ways we can manage a project, isn't there? So let's be honest about it. But then what happens with AgilePM? You've got that project management control, but then as it goes into development, it's called evolutionary development. What we have is we have an iterative and incremental approach, which works really well for projects where we may be exploring, you know, so if we've got highly adaptive projects where we don't have all the understanding and information up front, it may well be that rather than run a more traditional linear project or waterfall project, depending on sort of your terminology, you may be looking at a more of an iterative approach where you go through an evolutionary development, usually managed by time boxes or sprints. Scrum's very much featured in this as well. But if you're familiar with agile terminology in terms of sprints, AgilePM calls them time boxes. And what we have is we have an evolutionary development to develop the first part of the product in terms of what we know. That's all time boxed, so we've got clear time and cost constraints which don't get adjusted. What does get adjusted and is adaptable is the functionality as to what we produce. And this is where we use the Moscow, the must-have should have, could have, and won't have for now, a prioritization. And the difference between the agile approaches and the project management approaches is that when we come through evolutionary development, we can actually go back to foundations, okay, and then replan for the next part. Whereas with traditional project management approaches, with linear and waterfall, you know, we initiate the project or define the project in our first management stage, and then we would plan in more detail as we go through in a one-way path, if you like. Whereas within Agile and AgilePM in particular, you know, we do have that opportunity to come back to foundations and redefine the project, okay, and then go again. And this works really well, as I say, for exploratory projects or you know, for projects that you know, sort of have that uncertainty, if you like. So it could be adaptive or highly adaptive projects, okay. And you've got AgilePM, which is a complete approach, a complete methodology. This is why it's been really, really popular, I must say, because what you've got is you've got an option here where you could run a project under PRINCE2, or you could run a project under AgilePM, because AgilePM has got the project management control and life cycle. As opposed to other agile approaches like Scrum, because Scrum is more of a technique, and DSDM is more of a technique, you know, sort of used in Agile. Kanban is like a reporting, like an information wall. So they're all techniques, whereas AgilePM wraps project management disciplines around it, around the Scrum approach. And I think that's what's done it really good. Axelos have released PRINCE2 Agile, that came out in 2015. And PRINCE2 Agile is not an approach in itself, if you like. What it is, it's guidance for PRINCE2 practitioners on how to work with agile teams. So it's more the it's more the interfaces, if you like, in the respect that it says that when you're planning your project, or when you're planning a stage of your project, although the project manager is responsible for that, you need to have a collaborative approach, you know, with the agile teams, so that you can get that input. Okay, when you're developing requirements, when you're working in an agile environment, your requirements should take the form of user stories. So you can use that agile approach in terms of user stories. As a bus driver, I need contactless payment so that I can be protected behind the screen. You know, so it's a user story as a requirement, as opposed to requirements, you know, more traditional as we see it. So PRINCE2 Agile is designed for PRINCE2 practitioners. So if you're not a PRINCE2 practitioner, it's a little bit more difficult to understand. And if you're not working in a PRINCE2 environment, then PRINCE2 Agile is not really going to be too applicable. What you usually look at there, if you're looking at an agile approach for your organization, I'd usually recommend AgilePM. Okay. And then PMI and indeed PMI have an agile approach, Agile certified practitioner, and also BCS, of course, have agile approaches and qualifications, you know, sort of in their offering as well. So there's a whole load of different qualifications to have in the agile area. But if you want a project management controlled agile approach, then I'd certainly recommend that you look at AgilePM. Okay. Right, and as a project manager, you know, this is what we're coming back to, the project, you know, what makes a good project manager. I strongly believe what makes a good project manager is understanding your areas around you. So program management, you know, in terms of how am I impacting on programs if I'm part of a program, but also the development teams, and having a good understanding of how agile works in those areas. Okay, because then you can drive the agile meetings. Agile team meetings. Right, so there you go. So we've got 4 different levels actually there. And what pins them all together, in the methods at least that we develop and present, we've got this thing called P3O, okay, so Portfolio Program and Project Offices. Okay, this may be something that you look at as a structured approach. I wouldn't say it's the most used and popular qualification that we sell. We just don't get the numbers, to be honest. It's mostly the trainers that take the exams. But what people use it for is they may buy the P3O guidance and take some of the good stuff from it, to enhance their program offices. And essentially, what we've got here is P3O gives us a good view of communication and interaction between portfolios, programs, and projects. Okay, making sure that communication is right, that resources, if necessary, are being allocated in the right areas. And essentially, what you've got is within project management, you've got what we call a PSO, project support office, or project support to the project manager. And it may well be that you've got a centralized project support office, which allocates resources to support projects. You might have a program management office that gives expertise across your organization for, providing, disciplines, templates, facilitating workshops like initiation workshops, risk workshops, that sort of thing. And what you can have is your project office or program office becoming a real center of excellence to support all the different change initiatives in your organization. Okay, so from a qualifications point of view, again, be honest with you, I wouldn't, unless you're a program management officer or even a portfolio manager, I don't really see the obvious benefit of a project manager or someone coming into projects to be taking P3O qualifications. There's much better areas to invest your training budget, if you like. But what I do recommend is if you can get hold of a guidance. There's some really good stuff in there to help you enhance your program office that you may already have. And it's like a lot of these methods, we got like MOV, management of value. Again, very small market because it applies to top-end management who are making decisions. But there's some really good stuff in these guidances that could well just bring out different ways of thinking for project and program managers, to enhance the way you do things. Now, MOV is an Axelos method. It got launched in 2010, I think it was. Again, it's a great guidance, but it's not really been taken up because the market that it's aiming for is very slim. And also that market is not the type of market that can afford to have sort of 3 or 4 days out of the office, sort of studying for qualification. Essentially, management of value works very carefully or very closely with portfolio management in respect to looking at are we investing in the right areas. There may be change initiatives to say, look, if we complete this change initiative, the benefits are that we can do things in half the time. Yeah, we can process our work in half the time. Fantastic. Okay, then management of value says, well, what are you going to do with the time that we're saving then, for the organisation? So you look at those efficiencies and how they might be able to be broadened out across the organisation in other ways. So a business case may stack up, but you've got to look at what you're going to do with it. Management of risk, MOR, again, another Axelos PeopleCert method. It's just recently got updated about 4 or 5 months ago. Management of risk is now MOR4. Now, this is, again, quite a slim market. If I was to, sort of put some numbers on it, I'd say for every 100 project managers that we do, you'd usually get 10 program managers and probably 1 of each of the others. So that's typical. With Agile, I'd say that's probably in between project and program manager in terms of numbers. Okay, so it's just the scale, isn't it? Of sort of the organisations. Management of risk covers risk management at portfolio, program, project, and operational levels. Okay, as well as strategic levels. So there's various cycles of risk management and corporate governance within MOR, management of risk. Now, what you've got in each of the methods of MOP or portfolio management, program management, and project management, you've already got risk management processes and procedures embedded in those approaches. Okay, so if you learn project management, regardless of what approach you do, you will have an understanding and a procedure for managing risks. Okay, you'll identify risks, you'll estimate them, you look at the probability impact, you look at the responses you might take to help mitigate the risk, you know, to reduce the likelihood of it happening or reduce the impact of it. Okay, you'll assign a risk manager or risk owner to the risk to make sure that you know, we're keeping an eye on the situation, you know, so that it's, you know, whatever we happen to be doing is working in terms of containing that risk. Okay, and that's a risk cycle, that's risk management. And you'd have that at a portfolio, program, project level anyway. But what management of risk does is it pulls all that together in terms of interfaces them all, but also incorporates strategic risk and operational risk as well. You know, so outside of projects, okay, as an overall corporate governance. Okay, all of these are backed up by official guidances. You know, usually of 250 to 350 pages of formal guidance and methodology. Right, okay then, just a couple more and then we'll take some questions if you like. Okay, just had a question come in actually. In your opinion, does MOR offer greater benefit than APM's risk certificate? That's a good question. I think with MOR it's more strategic based than corporate governance. With APM risk certificate, I think it's well worth. I think when you get into the different methods, if you're going down the Axelos route, you probably get hooked into MOR. If you're going to add to APM, then you know it'd be risk management certificate. I think this is Graham. I might take your details, Graham, and get back to you on that, because I know more about MOR than I do APM's risk certificate. I've got to say, you know, I'm not sure whether the APM risk certificate looks quite so detailed at the corporate level, the strategic corporate level, and operational risks. So I can certainly look into that and drop you a line if that's okay. It'd be good to weigh the two up to balance them together. We do a lot of analysis on the other disciplines, you know, like projects and agile and program management when you look at the different bodies. But risk management, also MOR has just been updated to risk 4 as well, so it'll have a lot more best practice pulled into it. So yeah, so I'll take a note of your name, Graham, and get back to you on that. What's just come up is change management. Okay, the change management is not so much a method. Okay, because what we've got on the screen at the moment, up until change management, is a lot of approaches, a lot of methodology, you know, a lot of governance, if you like, and the way we do things. Change management is very different. Change management in this respect is an APMG Change Management Institute collaboration, if you like. And this is all about winning the hearts and minds of the people who are going to be impacted by what these change initiatives are delivering. Okay, so what we're doing is we're looking at the behaviours of individuals, of teams, and indeed of the organisation, and looking at how can we bring these people and teams and organisation along to embrace the change that is coming. Now, the Change Management Institute did quite a lot of research in the success of projects, and it was you know, one of the outputs that I remember from the surveys was that you can potentially increase your project success by up to 80%. You know, I did say 80, yeah, 80% by having effective change management. And this is because, you know, one of the biggest feedback you get from users and groups within organizations is that they feel that change and projects or project outputs are just basically forced upon them. You know, this is the way we're doing it now. It's like, you know, they feel that change is basically told as opposed to, you know, being part of that journey. And it's change management that really sort of drives forward the emphasis that, you know, when you look at the people who are impacted and the way the teams and departments and organisation behaves, you need to be part of that change. So you need to be involved right from the very start. And then you know, sort of that way you've got a sense of belonging, if you like, you know, for those user groups and those stakeholder groups. Now there's many different techniques within the change management approach. It's well worth getting some broad understanding of it if you're a project manager or team manager, because it really does help understand the other side, if you like. Now, what I have seen a lot recently is I wouldn't call it a new role, but a role's being advertised as project change managers. Now, being a project change manager is a bit of a conflict of interest, because as project managers, we're responsible and we're paid to deliver on time and to budget. Okay, we've got to obviously get the criteria right as well, but with time and cost, we've got to deliver. Okay, now we're not too concerned about what people think about it. You know, we need to get this done. Now, on the other side, as a change manager, if I was a change manager, I'd be more concerned with what the impacts are on the teams and how the organisation is going to function and operate and feel about what this change is going to bring. I don't really care about the time and cost that's being involved in the projects. I'm more concerned about the outcome and how that's going to be embraced and how that's going to change the organisation. You know, so there's very much a conflict of interest, if you like, you know, to try and do change management and project management at the same time as one person. So that can be quite difficult and a real challenge. Okay, so I think it's well worth bearing that in mind. However, as I say, a good appreciation of change management and what that means really does work. And it may well be that what you can do is you can get or you can enhance your stakeholder management or educate your senior users, you know, or business change managers in that discipline. I think that's something just to bear in mind. And it's well worth, you know, pulling forward that change management if you're an organisation and looking at different organisational skill sets that you're going to develop, rather than an individual in this seminar. I think it's worth looking down a change management route for that. Okay. Right. Okay then. Now then, got another question coming from Enrico. It's a quick look at that. Hello, Paul. From your experience, have you ever encountered a specific aspects in these PPP standards framework but maybe contradicting? Choose one standard over another? It's a really good question. What we see is, you know, there's sometimes there's conflict, but typically what you find more conflict in is not so much the standards. And PPP being public-private partnership, I guess, those initiatives. What we tend to find more in those is how they might work together in incorporating other standards, you know, such as governance and regulation, so various quality systems and quality standards. So the things that exist within the organisation outside of projects. So quite often it's not so much the project management approach that conflicts, because in all of these approaches, whether you look at APM or PRINCE2 or whatever, you can incorporate other approaches within your project documentation. So when you're developing your PID, you know, your project initiation document, or your PMP, your project management plan, you can incorporate other standards from partners, so that you can get this harmony, if you like, to harmonize the different approaches that you're going to use. And this can be addressed very early and should be addressed very early, even as early as concept or startup, you know, but then ironed out during initiation. And typically what I've seen is the conflicts that you may encounter through PPP arrangements is usually more generic in terms of governance, regulatory requirements, and so on. Okay, that's not to say that you might not come across a few other problems along the way. Okay, but with the project standards, quite often it comes down to terminology, life cycle, and such. And even if you've got one approach, even if you're both using APM, for example, or whatever, there's going to be discussions about how the project is going to be managed. Are you going to run it as an iterative project, you know, sort of an adaptable project on an agile approach, or are you going to run as a linear life cycle approach? So all of these type of discussions always happen anyway, and then you can wrap and build your controls around that. Okay, the other switch to that as well, which I thought you was asking when I heard half your question, Enrico, is when you're implementing these methods into an organization, quite often you'd already have some standards there in place, which you've been using up until now. And when we get involved with implementing project management standards into an organization, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want to retain the good stuff that you've got. So what you'd be looking at is you'd be looking at one standard against your own standards. And if there's conflicts, then you know you have to make a decision on what works for our organization. And quite often you'd find that the generic standard like PRINCE2 or APM, whichever standard you're putting in place, would usually win over your internal standard, but your knowledge base will fill the gaps in the standard approach, if you like. A lot of people and a lot of organizations take something like PRINCE2 or APM because it gives them that consistent approach when they're working with external organizations. It just makes sense, and that's one of the key benefits of having these industry standards. But last one here, BCS, I've put that across the back there because business analyst and business analysis work, sort of that it's very much focused on the business case, business justification throughout everything we do, really. And if I'm sure we got some VAs on the presentation, sort of viewing in and everything, and you'll be well aware that when developing business cases, some business cases will be projects in their own right. In major change initiatives, you'll have business cases that may well be to the value of 40-50 million just to develop the business case in a country infrastructure program. Then again, you might be doing BA work on a particular project. Okay, so it runs across the background there and throughout each of the change initiatives. Okay, right. And the final thing I do have on this particular drawing is a P3M3, which is Portfolio Program and Project Management Maturity Model. So 3 Ps and 3 Ms. This is more of an organizational discipline so that you can assess how good your organization is in terms of the different levels of portfolio program and project management. It's split into different areas in terms of control, benefits, finance, risk, governance, stakeholder, and resource. And that's very much an organizational assessment where we can come in and assess your organization, look at what's working really well for you, look at what's not working quite so well for your organization, and that way we can help you develop different skill sets in the right places, really. One more question here, John Scott. How much are project managers responsible for poor fault management resulting in unexpected failures? Well, that's where we come through the sort of how well was the project managed. Sometimes we look at so many different areas of what's caused our problems. It may be all the way back to did we establish the requirements properly in the first place. That's not necessarily the project manager's fault. It may well be that the customer environment didn't know what they wanted quite as well as they did, or they might have changed their mind along the way. It could be impacted by strategic changes, sort of organizational mergers, things just not being needed anymore, or maybe misunderstandings in conveying the message. When the project manager does become culpable, in my opinion, is when there's a clear misinterpretation or misrepresentation of the methods that they should be using. And if you're a project manager who doesn't always log their issues or don't deal with those in the right way, or should maybe communicate different events in a timely manner, and you just don't do that, and that's down to where the project manager will become responsible for unexpected failures and problems. But certainly, if you've got a framework in place and you're using it with integrity as a project professional, then that's your job. That's what you do, and that's what you're responsible for. So in terms of failures, there's so many different reasons why projects fail, and it's very rarely down to people not doing the right thing at the right time. Sometimes it's just like, we just didn't get the thing right in the first place. But when you look at that's not necessarily a problem with the method. It often extends from the user environment, if you like, where things have just changed, and we need practices in place to deal with that change. And it may well be that some things happen that just mean the project can't go on. So we may well close the project, realign our objectives, and then start again with the knowledge that we've got. Now, although that project is closed without actually delivering anything, that was the right management thing to do. So I think we've got to separate project management failure from project failure. They're two very different things, and if you get your project management right, then you will be continuing to invest in the right projects and change initiatives, and knowing when enough is enough as well, where we may need to stop now and then move on to the next initiative or re-baseline our objectives. Okay, right, okay then. So that's the first part. And we've got about 10 minutes left, I think, 10-15 minutes left, which is where I'm going to go through some different training and exam information for you. Okay, and just to point you in the right direction of other information. But has anyone got any questions at this juncture?
I don't know if you can take a question from me and whether you can hear me now.
I can hear you well, yeah.
So my question is, I've got an employer who's not so familiar with project management. Now they're insisting on myself taking a PRINCE2 approach, whereas the project is intrinsically time limited, cost limited, but the features can be variable. So it sounds like it's an agile project, but they want it delivered in a PRINCE2 fashion. Obviously, I can tailor reports, but is there anything else I could do? How would you address your employer?
Right. I think I heard half of your question because the sound went a bit funny in the middle of it. So apologies if I've misunderstood. But your employers asking you to go through PRINCE2 training, and they've got limited. Did you say they got limited resources in terms of time and cost for the changes that they want to implement?
Not so much limited resources, limited understanding. They're experts in their field, but they don't know project management really.
Okay then. Well, if they're experts in their field, they're limited understanding. Is it limited understanding on project management, or is it limited understanding on the products that they want to produce?
It's limited. They know what they want to do. It's a scientific project, sort of digital technology being adopted. So they know their stuff. They know what they want to do. They just don't know their project management methodology.
Right, because if it's project management methodology and they know exactly what they're going to deliver, then PRINCE2 is not a problem. The reason I asked is because a lot of research projects, and innovation projects, if you like, where you're not clear on what the outcome is going to be or the output is going to be, even though you're experts in your field. This is where I would recommend more AgilePM and an agile approach, because you can design the product. But you don't have to have a full understanding of it when you start, because you'll have what we call an incremental approach. So you may produce 20% of the product, if you like, and then you would have another look to understand where that's going to take you in the next evolutionary development. So you're not trying to plan and devise, if you like, the full product at the outset. And that gives you an agile approach. And the reason I say AgilePM is because AgilePM has this agile approach with sprints, and it's essentially Scrum with a project management layer wrapped around it. Now, what I can do, and I'll offer this to anybody who wants it. Actually, we've got e-learning for overview levels for PRINCE2, MSP, and AgilePM. And I'm more than happy, if PCS are happy as well, for us to offer that free of charge for anybody. And what it is it gives you a 1 hour e-learning, if you like. You can do it in an hour and a half, whatever long you want. But that will give you an overview of AgilePM and an overview of PRINCE2 and an overview of MSP and such. And I think in your case, it might be worth, I don't know whether you can encourage the organisation to commit an hour or so to that, information, because I think if they don't know project management, you probably need some sort of briefing on project management generally. If they're talking about PRINCE2, do they know PRINCE2 and what it means? So with PRINCE2, you do need to understand what your end product is, because otherwise you won't be able to plan it in initiation. If you don't know what the end project is, because it's a research project, then typically you need to have an iterative and incremental approach so that you can plan to develop what you know so far and then replan when you've got that increased knowledge partway through. And your iterations may be anything from 2 iterations up to many. Okay. So I think it's probably a wider question than we can answer straight away now.
It's a tricky question. And thanks, Paul. Great answer.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. It's Peter here in the BCS office. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I'm going to just throw it open to some questions from the office. So has anyone got a question? The microphone's pretty good, so if anyone's got a question that they want to answer. Two?
Thank you. Great talk so far. I hope it carries on. People often ask me, what about product management? How does that fit in?
Did you hear that, Paul?
Was that where product management comes in?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, product management would come in that bottom level there where I've got agile and development. Now, whether you you do this under agile, you know, as the name of agile, within most agile approaches, whether it be AgilePM, PRINCE2 Agile, DSDM, Scrum, you've usually got a role which is called the product owner. Okay, and the product owner would be the person who's responsible for developing that product. Whether that be managing the team through that or an individual, but they're responsible for the product being produced and also quality reviewed and signed off and such before it gets returned back to the project manager.
Cool.
Okay.
Any other questions coming up? I've got one. I was wondering kind of which of these different I suppose project management qualifications are applicable to particular industries. So depending on what industry you're in or whatever, is there a particular mapping of what you should do? I know you mentioned PMI. If you're working for an American company, then that's probably relevant. But in the UK, if you're working for different industries, what's the lens?
That's a tricky question, Peter, I must say, because essentially what all of these methods are, they're very generic. So they do apply to all sorts of industry sectors. And you know, you can certainly apply PRINCE2 or APM or use any of those environments for any type and scale of project. You know, sort of, I've seen APM being used a lot in construction and engineering. But by the same token, when you look at the way PRINCE2 works, you know, sort of from an engineering point of view, it worked very well. Construction, you then tend to find construction using methods like PRINCE2 because the construction industry has been doing project management for centuries, you know, so they've got their own methods and approaches and techniques and such. So what we tend not to see too much of is PRINCE2 in the construction industry. PRINCE2 is very much derived from the IT industry when you look at where it evolved from CCTA, the Central Computer and Telecommunications Agency, you know, back in the 80s. But all of these methods now are very much in the business sector, you know, so when you look at business projects. And I'm pleased to see that over the last decade or so, most organizations now, when you mention projects and project management, people don't just automatically say, yeah, that's our IT section that do projects. What we've seen is a real shift to the business areas of industry and organisations where, you know, business needs to own the projects, and your sectors such as, you know, the IT sectors they are suppliers to the business, you know, so because most projects will have an IT element to it. But to answer your question, there's no alignment, if you like, for any specific industry sector to any particular method, because you can apply these to any industry and type of project. Okay.
Just on the online questions, I think there's one we missed a little bit earlier, which was around change management. And it was one from Susie, who was asking about APMG change management versus is it PROMS-G?
PROMS-G, what are your thoughts about APMG change management? I'm not familiar with PROMS-G, I've got to admit, so I'm afraid I can't answer that. But again, you know, quite happy to you know, to put some, I'll take some of these questions away and put them on the slide deck for when we send it out, if you like. I've got to admit, I'm not familiar with PROMS-G. Okay.
Fine. Okay, thank you.
I'm quite happy to look into that. You know, there's another couple of online questions there, Peter. You know, sort of somebody said about the CPD can be registered. Well, that was yeah, Jumokio. To register your CPD, and you'd be talking there about PRINCE2 qualifications and retaining that. If you log into your Axelos area, so you go to axelos.com, you would have been set up a username and user area when you took your exam, and that's where you can register your CPDs. Is that I think it's actually myaxelos.com is the sub website. If you can't find it, then it's best to get in touch with PeopleCert, who are the exam body, and you know, because they're running that now. Okay, so either go to peoplecert.org or myaxelos.com. In terms of registering for the e-learning, Peter, you know, so you're probably best aligned to that, because what I can do is, you know, if we've got,
If you send me the details, then I'll forward it on to.
Yeah, I know we got a GDPR issue as well, because we're two different organisations. But if I receive anyone's email addresses, I can just set them up on the e-learning, and then they've got it. It's a very simple process for me to do. You know, it can be done fairly quickly. But we would need the request coming in, I think, from everybody, rather than just to do a blanket. Yeah,
if you send me the details, then I'll make it available to the people who've attended, and then we can take it from there.
Sure.
Brilliant. Paul, I think we've come to the end of our time. Thank you very much for a really interesting talk. And those slides will be available on our site.
Okay, no problem.
And thank you very much again. So,
okay, I'll leave you with that slide. I'll just leave that up there so that people can just have a quick read through that. You know, sort of just explains a little bit about the training and the exams. Again, very high level information, but if you want any more information, you know where we are. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Peter and BCS, for inviting me to present tonight.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Yeah.